Hong Kong is widely regarded as one of the top financial hubs all across the world, ranking side by side with financial cities like London, New York, Tokyo, and one of its big rivals in Southeast and East Asia, Singapore. What it means to be a financial hub, however, is that they possess some of the largest and most profitable banking institutions out there. It's like how New York has JP Morgan Chase and Citibank to London's Barclays, Tokyo's Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group and Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group, and Singapore's three banking giants, DBS Group, OCBC Bank and UOB. Hong Kong, however, boasts its own set of banking giants such as Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC, Bank of China, Hong Kong, Standard Chartered Bank, Hang Seng Bank, and Bank of East Asia. Some of these banks, however, possess vast international presence not limited to Hong Kong. Nevertheless, these banks have a deep history in Hong Kong, and we'll talk about them one by one, discussing their role in the city and how big they are. But before that, let's rank them by their total assets. This is an important indicator because it reflects the scale and capacity of a bank to operate, lend, and invest. Total assets measure not just the physical resources of the bank, but also its financial holdings, loans, and investment portfolios. Here's a graph with data gathered from KPMG showing the total assets in Hong Kong dollars. It shows just how big the total assets of HSBC is, followed by a list of other big banks. Now that we have an understanding of the largest banks by assets, let's talk about each of these banks in more detail. Let's first start with the largest, HSBC. HSBC is one of the world's most famous banks out there. Here's a graph of the company's market capitalization, which is a concept to understand how valuable a company is. If you were to buy HSBC today, you would probably need this much. They have a market capitalization of over $165 billion. This makes HSBC the 85th largest company globally, putting them above companies like Booking Holdings, Comcast, and AT&T. If we rank them by banks, however, HSBC is ranked as the 11th most valuable bank globally, above banks like Japan's Mitsubishi UFJ Financial to America's Citigroup, but behind the Royal Bank of Canada and a couple more banks out there. What makes HSBC so interesting, however, is that while it has substantial influence in Hong Kong, it is actually no longer headquartered in the country. It has moved to London, which may actually make it as a British company rather than a Hong Kong company. Nevertheless, it is still true that HSBC has its history deep entrenched in Hong Kong's rise. Therefore, its importance, before, today, and in the future, will continue to be a significant one for Hong Kong. Now, let's talk about how rich HSBC is beyond its market capitalization. One of the quickest ways to assess how rich a company really is through their revenues, net income, and assets. For a bank, these are important because they provide just how much reach they have, how profitable they are, and their capacity to lend and invest. Revenues, to begin with, are how much a bank gets from selling their products or services. Key examples that this can happen is when HSBC earns income from interest on loans, fees for services like wealth management and credit cards, and returns on investments. They then have to subtract something out of that revenue and use that to pay down their operating expenses, taxes, and provisions for loan losses. What's left after all these deductions is their net income, which serves as a key measure of profitability. Assets, on the other hand, are what a company owns. It could be land itself, a type of equipment, or even cash. For a bank, however, an asset is primarily composed of loans, investment securities, and cash reserves. Here's a graph of HSBC's net interest income over the years, along with non-net interest income and their total revenues. You can see that HSBC's has been quite stable, not growing at least since 2014 data. But beyond the data, you can also see how we divided two key indicators: net interest income and non-net interest income. These are the two primary streams that constitute a bank's total revenues. Now, even though HSBC isn't a fast-growing tech company that many people want to see out of it, it is still a big figure. Do mind that this graph is in billions of US dollars, so you get to actually see how big they are. Let's compare this graph to, for instance, Singapore's largest bank, known as DBS Group. As you can see, the total revenues of DBS Group pales in comparison to HSBC, which goes to show just how big HSBC is. Let's add the two companies' net profit and see how profitable they are. You can now see again just how well run HSBC is. These are no small figures, and not a lot of companies out there make this much money every single year. Finally, in terms of total assets, HSBC is actually one of the world's largest holders. This figure that you see here is over $3 trillion, which puts them as the 8th largest bank by total assets, above banks like Citigroup, Barclays, BNP Paribas, and so on. However, these are the figures of the entire company, which may not really represent Hong Kong alone. The figures in their Hong Kong entity, known as the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited. This is the table for that, and as you can see, it is still a massive company. It has over $1.33 trillion in total assets, which makes up the largest bulk of all HSBC's business. Beyond HSBC, there is also the Bank of China, Hong Kong. Bank of China, Hong Kong, is actually a subsidiary of the Chinese bank known as Bank of China, but it plays a massive role in the Hong Kong financial landscape, and as a standalone company, it is also big. Currently, it ranks as the 72nd most valuable bank out there, with a market capitalization of over $34 billion. That puts them above banks like Deutsche Bank, National Bank of Canada, and so on. Their revenues, on the other hand, are growing, which are unlike HSBC, the latest one, with over $9 billion. Their net income has also been significant, with $4.4 billion as of 2022. Total assets, on the other hand, is over $512 billion, which is actually big. Comparatively, DBS Group, which is the largest bank in Singapore, only has $616 billion. The third one is Standard Chartered, which is one of the Hong Kong 3 note-issuing banks, which is something the company shares with both Bank of China, Hong Kong, and HSBC. But what does it mean to be a note-issuing bank, you ask? Well, it means that these banks have the exclusive authority to issue Hong Kong dollar banknotes, a unique feature of Hong Kong's financial system. Unlike most countries, where only the central bank prints currency, Hong Kong delegates this responsibility to 3 commercial banks under the oversight of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HKMA. This arrangement reflects Hong Kong's historical ties to its colonial past, its free market philosophy, and the strong standing of these banks within the local and global financial systems. Hence, that is why these 3 banks are widely regarded as the face of Hong Kong's financial landscape. Standard Chartered, on the other hand, doesn't seem like a big bank in Hong Kong like HSBC. Here's a table from their Hong Kong subsidiary financial report. This shows that their 6 months ended in 2024. While it may seem small, that's because a lot of their bigger business is stationed internationally. Their total assets, on the other hand, are still big at over $333 billion. This still puts it as one of the largest banks globally by assets. The Standard Chartered as a whole has total assets of over $872 billion, putting them the 41st spot globally. But if it's only their Hong Kong subsidiary, it falls to around 90th globally, still ahead of famous banks like National Bank of Canada and Swedbank. So, just how big and rich are Hong Kong banks? Well, they are indeed big, but it is unlike Singapore, which is composed of its own set of banks. Hong Kong Banks is home to a wide variety of banks that are internationally recognized. But anyway, Do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.